I took all the blame for him, helping him ascend to the CEO position, yet on the very night I gave birth, he was in the bridal chamber with my sister. He said, "Lena, your sister is frail, consider this child hers." A meticulously planned plane crash left me cast into the sea. 5 years later, I returned with my adorable child, now a top-secret designer on the global stage. My ex-husband, eyes red, cornered me against the wall. "Come home with me, and I'll give you everything back." I linked arms with the immensely powerful man beside me, smiling with all the charm in the world. "Mr. Jax, I forgot to introduce, this is my husband. Come home with me, and I'll give you everything back." Jax's eyes were bloodshot. Once a lofty CEO, now like an abandoned, trapped beast, he pinned me firmly against the wall. 5 years have passed. He seemed unchanged, yet somehow completely different. Beneath his noble exterior, there was an indescribable weariness and regret. I curled my lips, but the smile never reached my eyes. "Return it to me? Jax, can you even repay it? My life, my child's life, the 5 years of youth I sacrificed for him, how does he intend to make amends?" His body trembled, the pain in his eyes deepening. "Lena, I know I was wrong. Please, give me one more chance." His voice was hoarse, carrying a plea even he might not have realized. The curve of my mouth grew wider as I sensuously brushed aside his arms that once held me captive. Turning around, I naturally linked arms with the man beside me, silent but radiating a powerful presence. "Mr. Jax, is it your eyesight that's failing, or your memory? Oh, I forgot to introduce you, this is my husband, Shah." Shah naturally wrapped his arm around my waist, his deep eyes carrying a faint smile, but his gaze toward Jax was as cold as ice. "Mr. Jax, I've heard much about you." Just 3 simple words, yet they carried the weight of a mountain. Jax's face gradually turned pale inch by inch. He stared fixedly at Shah's hand around my waist, his eyes as if trying to gouge that hand off. "Sir? Lena, who are you trying to fool?" he shouted, completely losing control. "You actually found some random man to act just to spite me?" "Act?" I chuckled lightly, as if I had just heard the biggest joke. I gently rested my head on Shah's shoulder, a gesture full of intimacy. "Mr. Jax has probably been a CEO for too long, thinking the whole world should revolve around him. Too bad, I'm not anymore. And besides, my name now is Vera. Vera, a name that represents rebirth and the pinnacle in the international design world. It's also the new identity I chose for myself." Jax had obviously heard the name before, the color drained completely from his face. "You." He wanted to say something, but the phone in his pocket rang at the worst possible moment. He intended to hang up, but when he saw the caller ID, his expression suddenly changed, and he immediately answered. On the other end, my dear sister Sherry's fragile yet anxious voice came through. "Jax, something's wrong. Our child, our Nina, he suddenly has a high fever and collapsed." Jax's face turned pale. "Which hospital?" "I'm coming right away." After hanging up, he gave me one last look, so complex I could barely understand it. There was anger, unwillingness, pain, and a trace of pleading. But in the end, he still turned around and staggered out. Watching his hurried retreat, the smile on my face finally faded. Shah tightened his hold on my hand, his warm touch seeping through the thin dress. "Are you okay?" I shook my head and put my smile back on. "It's nothing, let's go." The show had only just begun. Back at the hillside villa Shah had prepared for me, I slipped off my high heels and stepped barefoot onto the soft carpet. Outside the living room's floor-to-ceiling windows, the city of High was ablaze with countless lights. 5 years ago, it was from this dazzling sea of lights that I fell into endless darkness. That so-called accidental plane crash remains the talk of High City's residents to this day. Everyone believed that Lena, the original wife of FS's CEO, the infamous villainess who cleared every obstacle for Jax's rise, had sunk to the bottom of the sea. What they didn't know was that I clung to a piece of driftwood in the icy water, drifting all through the night. Just as my consciousness was fading, a private yacht found me. The one who saved me was Shah. At that time, he wasn't some all-powerful JS CEO, just a patient convalescing overseas. The two of us, abandoned by the world, found warmth in each other in a foreign land, supporting one another. He helped heal my wounds, gave me a new identity, and encouraged me to reclaim my dream of design. I accompanied him through rehabilitation, urging him to step out of the shadows and take back everything that belonged to him. "What are you thinking about?" Shaw's voice came from behind me, a jacket carrying his warmth gently draped over my shoulders. I snapped back to reality and shook my head. "Just thinking that Jax's child is sick, Sherry must be frantic." My tone was calm, betraying no emotion. But Shaw wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting atop my head. "Vera, it's all in the past now." "Yes, it's all in the past. But when midnight dreams return, the pain of that night of labor, the cries as my child was taken away, the terror of cabin depressurization, the cold plunge into the deep sea, they still jolt me awake. How could these ever just pass?" The next day, explosive news swept through the entire Haicheng business district. FS Group's most important high-end clothing brand boldly announced a collaboration with the mysterious designer Vera. And I, Vera herself, would personally take on the role of the brand's chief designer. As soon as the news broke, FS's stock price surged. Jax called me personally. "Lena, what exactly are you trying to do?" His voice was exhausted. "Mr. Jax, it's work hours now, please call me Vera." I answered the phone while reviewing design drafts. "If you want to discuss business, please schedule a time with my assistant." "If it's about personal matters," I paused, then smiled. "Sorry, it seems we don't have any personal matters to discuss." With that, I decisively hung up. Listening to the busy signal coming from the other end of the phone, Jax was so angry he almost threw his phone. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Sherry was weakly leaning against Jax's chest, watching the news report about me, her eyes filled with venom. "Jax, does she still blame us?" she cried, tears streaming down her face. "Nina is so seriously ill, and she's right here in Haicheng, yet she hasn't even come to see her once. How can she be so heartless?" Jax held her tightly, his expression complicated, silent. He didn't know that an even greater storm was waiting for him. And I, the one orchestrating this storm, was just receiving an unexpected call. It was from the hospital. "May I speak to Miss Vera?" "Mr. Jax and Sherry's child is in critical condition and requires a bone marrow transplant, but none of their matches have been successful. After genetic tracing and comparison, we found that your compatibility with the child might be the highest. So, I'd like to ask you to come to the hospital for a compatibility test." I held the phone, a smile curling at the corner of my mouth, cold as ice. Finally, it had come. I agreed to the hospital's request. When I appeared at the ward door, Sherry was sitting by the bed, tucking in the child named Nina. She saw me, froze for a moment, then her eyes burst with wild joy. But that joy was quickly masked, replaced by a pitiful expression. "Sister, you finally agreed to come." She stood up, trying to take my hand, but I sidestepped. "I thought you didn't even care about your nephew's fate anymore." She looked on the verge of tears, as if I were the unforgivable villain. I couldn't be bothered with her and let my gaze fall on the child in the bed. Pale, frail, asleep. In the features, there was indeed a faint resemblance to Jax. But that was all. Jax also came in from outside, and when he saw me, his steps faltered. "You're here." His voice carried a complex emotion I couldn't quite understand. "I'm here for the matching." I was brief and to the point. "Saving the child is fine, but I have conditions." Sherry immediately looked at me warily. "What conditions?" "I want 51% of the shares in the Fengshang brand under FS Group." "You're dreaming." Sherry screamed. Fengshang was the core of FS Apparel and the brand she currently controlled. It was the foundation of her standing in the socialite circle. But Jax gave me a long, deep look and said in a low voice, "Fine, I agree." "Jax." Sherry looked at him in disbelief. Jax ignored her and simply said to me, "As long as you can save Nina, I'll agree to any condition." There was a hint of desperate madness in his eyes. I sneered inwardly. Jax, do you really think that putting on the act of a deeply loving father will move me? The more you love this child, the more it proves how cruel you were to me back then. Blood was drawn and tested. I sat quietly in the hospital corridor, waiting for the results. Shaw stayed by my side, handing me a cup of warm water. Are you really going to save him? He asked. Why not? I retorted. He's just an innocent child. Shaw said nothing more, only squeezing my hand tightly. He was always like this, unconditionally supporting every decision I made. During the wait, Sherry was restless, trying several times to come over and talk to me, but Shaw's cold glare kept her at bay. Jax leaned against the opposite wall, smoking one cigarette after another. In the haze of smoke, I couldn't make out his expression. A few hours later, the doctor hurried over, holding the test results. His expression was very strange. Doctor, how is it? Was the match successful? Sherry was the first to rush forward. The doctor pushed up his glasses, looked at me, then at Jax and Sherry. The matching was unsuccessful. Sherry's face instantly turned pale. How could this be? How could it not be successful? Isn't she the child's own aunt? Jax suddenly straightened up, staring intently at the doctor. The doctor looked troubled, as if there was something unspeakable. Miss Vera and the child's HLA loci, none of them match. Genetically speaking, there is no blood relation between you two. The entire corridor fell into a deathly silence. Sherry seemed to have all her strength drained, collapsing to the ground. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. I stood up, walked over to the doctor, and took the test report. Then, I went to Jax and slapped another test report on his chest. It was the DNA report of my own child, which I had prepared long ago. Jax, now, I'm going to show you something even more interesting. Open your dog eyes wide and see clearly, who exactly is the child I gave birth to 5 years ago. Jax stiffly lowered his head, like a robot programmed to obey. His gaze fell on the paper I slapped onto his chest. It was a paternity test report. The subjects were me and a child named Lon. Relationship, mother and son. In the result column, it read not supported. Jax's pupils suddenly contracted. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot and filled with disbelief. Not supported, what does that mean? His voice trembled uncontrollably. I laughed, laughing until tears nearly spilled from my eyes. It means the child I brought back isn't mine either. Jax, do you think I, Lena, deserve to be toyed with by you all like a puppet? This sentence struck like a thunderbolt, crashing down on both Jax and Sherry, who was slumped on the ground. Sherry suddenly looked up, screaming, impossible. That child clearly. She stopped mid-sentence, as if realizing something, and quickly covered her mouth. Too late. Jax had already caught the flaw in her words. Like an enraged lion, he grabbed Sherry by the collar and yanked her off the ground. Clearly what? Sherry. You better explain yourself. 5 years ago, you told me you were carrying my child. You told me the one Lena gave birth to was a bastard. You told me you saw her with another man with your own eyes. You told me the plane crash was her own fault. With every word Jax spoke, his grip tightened. Sherry's face turned a deep purplish red as she struggled desperately. I didn't. Jax, listen to me explain. Explain? In Jax's eyes was a storm that could destroy the world. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he released Sherry abruptly and rushed to the hospital bed, staring intently at the sleeping child. This is the child he had cared for and loved for 5 years. The child he thought was his and Lena's, then was deceived by Sherry into believing was his and Sherry's. Now, someone is telling him that all of this is a lie. He went mad, rushing out of the hospital room and grabbing the doctor who had just left. Do it. Do a paternity test for me and this child. Now. Immediately. Right this second. The doctor was terrified and nodded repeatedly. At that moment, I finally woke up completely. I had always thought that Jax betrayed me for Sherry, stole my child, and even wanted to take my life. All my hatred was focused solely on him. But now it seems the situation is far more complicated than I imagined. Jax may not be the mastermind. He might just be a pitiful pawn kept in the dark. The real culprit is my dear sister, Sherry. And behind her, someone I have never met. The one who enabled Sherry to orchestrate a flawless plane crash, to pull off a switcheroo, slipping a child, whose identity was unknown, into Jax's life for 5 years. A chill surged from the soles of my feet straight to the crown of my head. The revenge I thought I was pursuing had been aimed in the wrong direction from the very start. I stared fixedly at Sherry. She was slumped on the ground, her face pale as death, eyes darting nervously, her whole body trembling. She was looking at me too, but the look in her eyes was no longer the disguise or jealousy from before. It was a bone-deep terror. The results of the paternity test came back faster than expected. Jax held the thin sheet of paper, his hand shaking as if struck by a stroke. In the results section, 3 glaring words were written: no blood relation. His tall frame wavered, as if all the bones had been drained from his body, and he collapsed against the wall. The handsome face drained of all color, leaving only a deathly gray. 5 years. He had given up Lena for this child. He had carried 5 years of guilt and self-reproach for this child. He had even just agreed to Lena's humiliating condition for the sake of this child. But in the end, it was a complete and utter deception. The child he had raised for 5 years belonged to someone else. Ah! A piercing scream burst from Jax's throat. Like a mad beast, he lunged fiercely at Sherry, slapping her hard across the face. Smack! The sharp sound echoed through the silent corridor. Sherry's face instantly swelled up, blood seeping from the corner of her mouth. Bitch! Jax's eyes were bloodshot, his reason completely lost. Where is my child? Lena's child? Where did you take him? He gripped Sherry's neck tightly, pinning her against the wall. Sherry's eyes rolled back as he strangled her, her feet kicking wildly. I don't know, cough cough, don't know? Murderous intent surged in Jax's eyes. Sherry, don't force me to kill you. Watching this dog-eat-dog farce unfold before me, I felt no satisfaction, only a cold, barren emptiness. Shaw gripped my hand, pulling me behind him, cutting off Jax's madness. Call the police, he said to the bodyguards behind him. The police arrived quickly. Jax was pulled away, while Sherry collapsed to the ground like a heap of rotten mud, gasping for breath. Officer, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me, she pointed at Jax, crying hysterically. Jax looked at her, his eyes devoid of anger, replaced only by endless coldness and disgust. Sherry, from today on, you and your family, have nothing to do with each other. I will make sure you and your lover pay with the life of my true child. Having said that, he didn't even glance back at Sherry, turning instead to walk step by step toward me. Standing before me, his tall figure completely overshadowed me. He opened his mouth, as if wanting to say something. The eyes that once brimmed with youthful pride now held nothing but shattered pleas. Lena. He struggled to utter the 2 words. My child, our child, he's still alive, isn't he? He looked at me like a drowning man clutching at his last lifeline. Seeing him so pitiful, I suddenly felt a wave of indifference. The carefully plotted revenge I thought would make him suffer beyond measure only uncovered another deception I had never known. And he, once the perpetrator, had somehow become the victim. How utterly ridiculous. I didn't answer his question, merely stared at him coldly. Jax, this is what you owe me. You were deceived, you suffered, you despaired, it's all your own doing. As for my child. I paused, hooked my arm through Shaw's, and turned to walk away. His name is Lon. He has a father, a mother, and is living well. So please, from now on, don't come disturbing our lives anymore. My voice reached his ears clearly. I could feel that gaze behind me, almost piercing through me. But I didn't turn around. Jax, the game has only just begun. You think it's over? No. What you owe me, I want you to pay back for a lifetime. Lon. This is the name Shaw chose for my child. Of course, it's just a code name, a trigger to provoke Jax. My son, I call him Nora. Nora is 4.5 years old, a little guy who embodies all the best qualities of both me and Jax. He has Jax's dangerously charming face, but a heart as sharp and clear as mine. When I told him what happened at the hospital, he was sitting on the carpet, focused on assembling a complex Lego model. He didn't even look up, just gave a faint "oh." Mommy, so that fool finally realized he was tricked? Does that mean he's coming to find us soon? Very likely. Nora finally stopped what she was doing and lifted her exquisitely delicate little face, a sly glint flashing in her black grape-like eyes. Mommy, don't worry. If he dares to come, I'll show him what the power of a naughty kid really means. He made me laugh, and the knot in my heart loosened considerably. With a child like this, what more could I ask for? The next day, Jax did indeed come. He pulled up to the villa in that flashy Maybach, but was stopped by the security guard at the gate. Sir, do you have an appointment? I'm here to see Vera. I'm her friend. Jax's voice was a bit dry. The guard reported to me through the intercom. Before I could speak, Nora snatched the walkie-talkie and said in a childish voice, Uncle Sam, tell the man outside that Mommy isn't home. She said she doesn't want to see a fool who can't even recognize his own child. After saying that, she slammed the walkie-talkie shut with a click. Well done. Jax's expression outside the door must be priceless. Sure enough, it wasn't long before my phone rang. It was Jax's number. I immediately muted it and tossed it aside. Nora came over, acting all grown up as she patted my hand. Mommy, you can't be soft with people like that. The more you pay attention to him, the more he pushes. I rubbed his little head, feeling warm inside. However, I had underestimated Jax's determination. Unable to get in, he waited right at the door. From day until night. It rained in Sea City, but he didn't leave, just stood there in the rain, letting the cold water soak through his expensive suit. That pitiful yet heartfelt look, if you didn't know better, you'd think it was a scene from some idle drama. Nora leaned against the window, watching that fool downstairs, and curled her lip. Mommy, do you think he's lost his mind? Why else would he be standing in the water? His innocent words made me chuckle. Maybe. Mommy, I'm going to give him some warmth. Nora said, then dashed off with quick little steps. Curious about what she was up to, I followed her. I saw her drag out a huge water gun from the storage room. Then she ran up to the balcony on the second floor, aimed it carefully toward Jax downstairs. Uncle, on rainy days, you have to drink more hot water, she shouted. The next second, a powerful jet of water shot out from the water gun, hitting Jax squarely, soaking his head and face. Jax? Me? I swear, I saw Jax's face turn as black as the bottom of a pot. Nora threw down her water gun, clapped her hands, and looked at me with a triumphant grin. Mommy, am I awesome or what? I silently gave her a thumbs up. No wonder he's my son. When it comes to being scheming, he's truly outdone me. Jax was warmed up by Nora and finally left. But he didn't give up. He began to use all his resources, frantically investigating the plane crash from 5 years ago and the man behind Sherry. Meanwhile, Shaw never stopped his own investigation. Two mortal enemies battling to the death in the business world, somehow reached a strange tacit understanding because of the same goal. Jax discovered that over the past 5 years, Sherry had been closely involved with a man named Harper. Harper, the second son of the SL Group in Haicheng, a notorious playboy, and also one of Jax's former rivals. Shaw uncovered something deeper. That plane crash wasn't an accident. In the study, Shaw slid a document across to me. A critical part of the plane was tampered with before takeoff. The person who did it was a ground crew member at the airport. The day after the incident, he fled overseas with his family and has never been found since. And the overseas account that paid him ultimately traced back to a shell company of the SL Group abroad. My fingertips went icy cold. It was definitely Harper. And that's not all. Shaw's face was grim. I found out that Harper and Sherry were together before you and Jax got married. So, that child on the sickbed is very likely. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. It was all like a huge web, ensnaring everyone within it. Sherry, in order to be with Harper and to get Jax's fortune, didn't hesitate to orchestrate a plane crash and kill her own sister and nephew. And Harper not only wanted the beauty but also saw this as an opportunity to bring down the FS Group. A perfect two birds one stone move. Jax has also found out about Harper, I said. Yeah, he's been causing trouble for Harper lately. SL stock price has hit the limit down several times because of him. There was a barely noticeable hint of schadenfreude in Shaw's tone. I looked at him with a slight smile. You seem pretty happy to see him make a move? Shaw raised an eyebrow, non-committal. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let him be the knife that stirs the water, only then can we sit back and reap the benefits. I had to admit, Shaw was right. It was far more legitimate for Jax, the so-called victim, to expose this himself than for us to make a move. When Jax goes mad, he even bites himself. Harper and Sherry had truly hit a brick wall this time. Sure enough, within a few days, a shocking scandal broke out in Haicheng. Jax, president of FS Group, publicly accused Harper, the second son of SL Group, of commercial fraud, intentional injury, and hiring a hitman. The evidence was a high-definition recording. In the recording, Sherry and Harper were having a conversation. Don't worry, that fool Jax still thinks that kid is his own. Once he's dead, the entire FS will be ours. That bitch Lena has long since rotted to the bone in the sea, who would ever know it was us? Once the recording was released, the entire Haicheng exploded. SL Group's stock price plummeted, crashing outright. Harper and Sherry were taken away by the police amid a storm of uproar. It was a moment of great satisfaction. I watched the news, seeing Sherry's face, pale and lifeless, as she was handcuffed, yet my heart remained unmoved. It was all supposed to end now. I picked up my phone, ready to send a message to Shaw. Suddenly, an unknown number called. I hesitated for a moment but answered. On the other end came a cold male voice, distorted by a voice changer. Miss Vera, or should I say, Miss Lena. Do you want your son back? Tonight at 10, the abandoned dock in the west of the city. Come alone. Otherwise, prepare to collect his body. That cold voice, like a venomous snake, instantly coiled around my heart. Nora. I sprang up from the sofa and rushed to Nora's room. The room was empty. His favorite Lego pieces were scattered all over the floor, the window wide open, letting in the cold wind. My blood chilled to the core in an instant. The phone rang again, it was Shaw. Vera, Nora is missing. His voice was filled with unprecedented urgency. I know. My voice trembled. I got a call from the kidnappers. I relayed every word from the call to Shaw without missing a detail. Don't act rashly. It's a trap. I'm tracking that number right now. Shaw shouted on the other end. It's too late. I stared out into the heavy night, my eyes filled with a resolve I had never known before. Shaw, if I don't come back, please take care of him for me. With that, I hung up, grabbed the car keys, and rushed out. I couldn't gamble with Nora's life. At the same time, Jax received a call. It was Harper, using the last bit of strength before being captured to call him. Jax, do you think you've won? Your son is now in my hands. If you want him to live, come to the West Harbor. Let's settle this once and for all. Jax gripped the phone, veins bulging on the back of his hand. He never imagined that Harper, this madman, would dare to touch his child. Without a moment's hesitation, he jumped into his car and sped toward the West Harbor. Tonight, the West Harbor was destined to be anything but peaceful. And while the whole city's attention was drawn to the kidnapping, a grand fashion show was unfolding at the landmark building downtown. This was the most important annual show for the Fengshang brand. It was also my first show since taking over Fengshang. My name is Vera. After Sherry's downfall, Fengshang was leaderless, and everyone was on edge. They were all waiting to see me fail. They thought Vera was just a designer who could draw blueprints, with no understanding of business. They also believed that tonight, I would be thrown into chaos by my son's kidnapping and have no time to focus on this show. They were all wrong. When the fashion show was halfway through, all the models had finished their presentations, and the lights dimmed. A spotlight shone at the end of the runway. I walked out slowly, dressed in a sharp black suit. The entire room fell silent. Every eye was fixed on me. I picked up the microphone, my voice clear and resonant throughout the venue. Hello everyone, I am Vera. Before you enjoy my new collection, I would like to show you something old first. The giant screen behind me lit up instantly. What appeared was not a dazzling design draft, but a series of comparison images. On the left were the so-called original designs Sherry had released over the past few years under the name Fengshang. On the right were works by some obscure foreign designers, published years ago. The composition, the cuts, the elements, all identical. Barefaced plagiarism. The entire room erupted. The reporter's camera flashes flickered wildly, as if gone mad. As everyone knows, Miss Sherry, the former design director of Fengshang, was famed for her genius design talent. My voice carried a trace of mockery. But today, I want to reveal a truth to you all. This so-called genius is nothing but a shameless thief. Not only did she steal others' designs, she stole their lives as well. No sooner had I spoken than the images on the big screen switched again. The recording Jax had provided to the police, of Sherry and Harper, was made public. The clear, venomous dialogue made everyone present gasp in shock. Plagiarism, hiring a hitman, scheming to seize family property. Sherry, once the top socialite of Haicheng, instantly had her image shattered, reduced to a thoroughly wicked and poisonous woman. Fengshang is built on lies and filth. Today, I will personally bring down its curtain. I looked at the shocked, disdainful, and angry faces in the audience and slowly took a bow. From now on, there will be no more Fengshang in this world. Only mine, Vera. The abandoned dock in the west of the city. The sea wind howled, stirring up rust and the briny smell of seawater. When I arrived, Jax was already there. He stood in the empty space, radiating a terrifying aura of hostility. Not far away, Harper was surrounded by several men in black. In his arms was a child, blindfolded and gagged. It was Nora. My heart clenched instantly. Lena. You really dared to come alone. Harper saw me and grinned wildly, full of arrogance. No wonder you're the woman I chose, bold enough. I was too tired to argue, staring at him coldly. Let the child go. Let go? Harper laughed as if he'd heard a joke. Lena, are you too naive? You and Jax have caused me so much trouble, how could I ever let your bastard off so easily? His hand tightened around Nora's neck. Nora let out a painful whimper. Harper. Jax's eyes blazed with fury. You're coming at me. Let the child go. Coming at you? Harper laughed even harder. Jax, your biggest weakness is that you care too much about this bastard. Today, I'll make you watch with your own eyes how he dies right in front of you. With that, he pulled out a dagger and pressed it against Nora's neck. The cold blade gleamed with a deadly chill under the dim light. No. I screamed, trying to rush forward, but was held back by the men in black. At this critical moment, a blinding beam of light suddenly shot from afar, making it impossible to keep one's eyes open. Immediately following was the deafening roar of helicopter rotors. Several helicopters descended from the sky, circling above the dock. The cabin doors opened, and one by one, special police officers dressed in black combat gear, armed to the teeth, descended rapidly like divine soldiers, surrounding the entire dock so tightly that not even water could seep through. Shaw, clad in a black trench coat, slowly stepped down from the lead helicopter. Behind him followed a large contingent of police forces. Harper and his men were completely stunned. They never imagined Shaw could mobilize such a massive force. "Harper, you're under arrest," Shaw's voice was as cold as ice. Harper's face turned deathly pale, he knew he was at the end of the road. He glanced at the hostage in his arms, then at Jax and me, a flicker of mad resolve flashing in his eyes. "Since we're all going to die, then let's die together," he roared, raising a dagger, about to stab Nora. Bang! A gunshot pierced the night. Harper's wrist, gripping the dagger, exploded in a spray of blood. The dagger clattered to the ground. The one who fired was Jax. He had somehow grabbed a gun, and at the very moment Harper made his move, he decisively pulled the trigger. Harper cried out in pain and released Nora. Like a leopard, Jax lunged forward, holding Nora tightly in his arms. Almost simultaneously, the surrounding SWAT team surged forward, pinning Harper and his men firmly to the ground. Everything was settled. Jax, bloodied, both Harper's and his own, held Nora and walked step by step toward me. He reached me and handed over the unharmed child in his arms. "Lena, I'm sorry." He looked at me, the redness in his eyes fading, leaving only endless exhaustion and regret. "I'm giving him back to you." I looked at the child in his arms, and the child was looking right back at me. He pulled off the black cloth covering his eyes, blinked at me, and flashed a mischievous smile. I was stunned. This child was not Nora. Holding that unfamiliar child, my whole body went rigid. Jax noticed something was wrong too. He looked at the child, then at me, his eyes full of confusion. "Lena, he's not Nora," I interrupted him. My voice was calm, but only I knew how fast my heart was pounding. If this child wasn't Nora, then where was my Nora? Just then, Shaw came over. He took off his trench coat and draped it over me, then took the child from my arms. He smiled gently at the child. "Yuri, thank you for your hard work." That child named Yuri nodded obediently, then was taken away by a police officer. Shaw turned his head to look at Jax, a hint of a victor's demeanor in his eyes. "Mr. Jax, I forgot to tell you. Nora was never kidnapped. He should be at home right now, eating the midnight snack I had Mona prepare for him." Jax was struck like lightning, frozen in place. "What do you mean?" "What I mean is," Shaw's lips curled into a mocking smile, "this whole thing was a setup I orchestrated from the start. A setup to make you and Harper tear each other apart like dogs. The kidnapping was fake, the calls were fake, even that child was an actor I hired. The sole purpose was to lure you into the trap, to make you personally send Harper to prison. By the way, let me also let you taste what it feels like to believe your closest kin is in danger, yet be powerless to help." Every word Shaw spoke was like a knife, stabbing mercilessly into Jax's heart. Jax staggered back 2 steps, staring at us in disbelief. He looked at Shaw, then at me. "So, you've been using me from the very beginning?" His voice was hoarse and broken. I said nothing, tacitly confirming it. At this moment, I felt no sympathy, no pity for him. All of this was what he deserved. If it weren't for his foolishness and blind trust back then, how could all this tragedy have come to pass? He was in pain, he was desperate, but that was the price he paid for his own choices. Jax laughed, a laugh more ugly than tears. Like a beast utterly crushed and defeated, the light in his eyes flickered and slowly died out. He lost. Lost utterly and completely. Lost his lover, lost his child, lost his dignity. Lost everything he had. "Lena." He looked at me, his eyes thick with unrelenting regret and pain. "I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Come back to me." He begged humbly, like a lost child. "I'll give you I'll give you my life, just come back." I watched him quietly, my heart calm and still. "Jax." I finally spoke, my voice cold as the sea breeze on the dock. "You're not wrong. You're just unworthy." With that, I linked arms with Shaw, turned, and walked away without looking back. Behind me came Jax's heart-wrenching cries. But I didn't turn around again. Jax, goodbye. No, never to see you again. The Harper and Sherry case became the city's sensational headline. With multiple sentences combined, they would spend the rest of their lives in prison. The innocent child on the sickbed was also sent to a welfare institution, waiting for a family that would truly love him. FS Group, due to Jax's negligence and a series of scandals, saw its stock price plummet, teetering on the edge of collapse. Meanwhile, my brand Vera rose powerfully from the ruins, becoming the hottest new name in the fashion world. Everything had finally settled. I moved with Nora out of the hillside villa that had witnessed too many storms. Shaw bought us a small house by the sea, complete with a garden. Sunshine, sand, waves. And the two people I love most. This is the life I want. That afternoon, I was pruning roses in the garden while Nora dug a sandpit nearby with a small shovel. Shaw came out of the house carrying a plate of sliced fruit. Take a break, he said. He placed the fruit plate on the wicker table and naturally wrapped his arms around my waist from behind. I leaned into his embrace, watching Nora chasing the waves on the beach not far away, a smile unconsciously curling at the corners of my mouth. Thank you, Shaw. I said. Thank you for pulling me up when I was at my most desperate. Thank you for giving me a new life, for giving me a home. Shaw rested his chin on the top of my head and gently nuzzled me. Silly, between us, there's no need to say thank you. His voice was as gentle as the spring breeze in April. I knew how he felt about me. Everything he had done for me over these 5 years, I had seen and kept in my heart. It's just that I wasn't ready yet. Hurt too deeply by Jax, I was afraid that if I gave my heart again, it would be betrayed once more. Shaw seemed to understand my hesitation, he never pressured me. He simply stayed quietly by my side, warming my heart, long frozen, little by little, in his own way. Just then, the garden doorbell rang. I was a bit puzzled, who could it be at this hour? Shaw walked over and opened the door. Standing there was Jax. He had lost a lot of weight and looked worn out, no longer the confident, spirited man he once was. In his hand, he carried a huge toy gift box. I came to see Nora, he said, looking at me with a cautious, almost pleading humility in his eyes. Hearing his voice, Nora lifted her head from the sandbox. Seeing him, she curled her lip, then lowered her head again, continuing to play with her sand. Shaw stood firm in the doorway, showing no intention of letting him in. Mr. Jax, I think Vera has made things very clear, Shaw said. We do not welcome you. Jax ignored him, stubbornly fixing his gaze on me. Lena, I sold FS, he said. All the money, I put into a trust fund, with Nora as the beneficiary. I don't want anything else. I just want to be able to see him often. Please, give me a chance to make amends. He looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed. This once arrogant man was now humbled to the dust. I looked at him, my heart a tangle of emotions. In the end, I still let Jax into the garden. It wasn't forgiveness, nor softening of my heart. It was simply because I didn't want Nora's life to bear any regrets because of my hatred. He has the right to know who his biological father is. He also has the right to choose whether or not to accept this father. Nora is very smart, and he seemed to understand what I meant. He no longer sneered or mocked Jax, but crossed his arms and stood coolly to the side, watching the man who was both familiar and strange. Jax crouched down and handed him the toy gift box in his hand. Nora, this is a gift from Dad. His voice trembled as he spoke the word Dad. Nora glanced at the huge gift box, then looked at Jax. He didn't respond. He turned around and ran to Shaw's side, grabbing Shaw's hand. Then, he looked back at Jax and said, Uncle, thank you for the gift. But I already have a dad. Innocent words, yet the most painful. I saw Jax's body stiffen suddenly, the light in his eyes fading completely. He lost. Once again, utterly and completely defeated. He gave a bitter smile, stood up, and placed the gift on the nearby bench. It's okay. He looked deeply at Nora, then at me. In his eyes were emotions I couldn't understand: regret, reluctance, blessing. Finally, he turned and left, lonely and desolate. Watching his lonely back, I suddenly felt that everything had truly passed. Hatred is like a shackle, not only binding him but also binding me. Now, it's time to let go. Shaw took my hand and pulled me into his arms. It's all over, he said. I nodded, leaning against his warm chest, feeling his strong heartbeat. Shaw. Let's get married. I looked up at him, speaking earnestly. Shaw was stunned, then a surge of overwhelming joy filled his eyes. He lowered his head and kissed me fiercely. This kiss carried no desire, only the preciousness and joy of something lost and found again. In the distance, Nora watched us, wearing a big smile. The sunlight was just right, the breeze gentle. After weathering storms and tempests, my life finally welcomed its own clear skies and bright days. My future holds a lover, children, and a career I built with my own hands. I am no longer anyone's accessory, nor do I live for anyone else. I am Lena, I am Vera, and above all, I am myself. That is enough.